and Commissioner will kick us off with a welcome message. And we're excited about that, having him. So Amanda will be watching for when Commissioner Morath comes in so we can spotlight him and turn it over to him. On the next slide, I want to just preview our agenda for today, our day at a glance. So Rohana and I with TEA, we introduced ourselves. We're just setting the stage. We're the warm-up act here, getting us going, making sure that everybody's comfortable, well and hydrated, and learning about everybody's favorite morning beverage, and letting you know what the focus of the summit is. Then the commissioner will join us for 30 minutes, and then we're going to take a break. Breaks are important for our wellness and resiliency, so we've included 2 of them throughout the morning. Then we have a fabulous interagency leadership panel, and we're going to have a great roundtable chat and to listen to some thoughts on leadership from all of these interagency leaders. As you can see in your summit workbook, the names of the presenters are highlighted there with live hyperlinks. So all of the biographies for presenters throughout the month, the session is done throughout the month of September, so more people have the opportunity to join. Rather than being away from your offices and traveling and doing it for 3 days in a row, like we have done in the past, we're just scattering it through 5 sessions in the month. And so all of the different leader biographies are in the back who will be presenting throughout the month. So please take an opportunity to notice the leaders that are presenting. So after the interagency leadership panel, we'll have another break. You grab something to eat, get yourself refreshed there at noon, and then come back with your lunch or your refreshed beverage and listen to a wonderful charge and message on daring to lead in the school mental health space by Natalie Feacock. Many of you know Natalie. Natalie has worked with us at TEA as the Aware State Coordinator in the past, and now leads school mental health work over at the Mental Health Technology Transfer Center at UT. So we'll look forward to hearing from Natalie. And then Dr. Lopez and I, Director at UT, will wrap up the session, have some sending messages and discussion, and we will preview for you some of the work we're going to be doing next week at the summit on imagining and reimagining student supports. So that's our day. Sit back and relax, and we'll listen to the messages that are being brought to us today by our leaders. On the next slide, I just pulled this out of our workbook. I just want to bring it to our attention that when we foster the academic success and wellness of our students, this really does take, all the research is clear, a coordinated effort among families, schools, and community partners. And we just all know the difficult time that we've been through. We've talked about this over the past couple of years, provided resources and supports from all the collaborative agencies. But as we restart the school year in September, just to remember our focus, that increased urgency for building collaborations to support the resilience of our students, staff, families, and communities. So together we can help build resiliency in ourselves and in our communities. And so in this opening session of the summit, we're going to explore the leadership role and help to set the vision, to cast the vision for school mental health in Texas, which takes all of our minds and hearts coming together. And so those of you who are here are leading in this space. You're all leaders, and thank you so much for coming. So on the next slide, we would like to just kind of focus on that word resilience. There is so much resilience, literature, material, and in fact, Project Aware Texas, between the Health and Human Services Commission, Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health, TEA, TJJD, we're working on some materials, some learning support materials for teaching and in the classroom around resilience. But what we'd like to do is just, what does resilience mean to you? If you could just share your thoughts with us in the chat. Hannah, I think you were going to talk about that and kind of monitor the chat and kind of reflect back some of the thoughts of resilience that the audience brings with us today.
Absolutely. Resilience can empower you to withstand and learn from difficult and traumatic experiences. So I would love to see your thoughts on leading resilience, being the eye of the storm. Just keep swimming. I like that. Inner strength to move forward. The ability to recover from difficulties, overcoming barriers. Oh, thank you, Willa. The ability to navigate life's challenges in a healthy and positive manner. Endura, ability to bounce back and have the skills to keep moving forward. Healing, absolutely. Ability to be tough and flexible at the same time. Ability to make sense. Oh, I like that, Lillian, of what is happening. Grit, to keep going.
Everyone, we're going to save these contributions in the chat with your thoughts as we work through the summit when we have these engagement opportunities, so that we can compile what some of your input is and how you think about the construct, for example, today on resilience. And so thank you for sharing what your thoughts are, because there are so many multiple definitions and concepts that are integrated and do combine to involve and influence our behaviors, our thoughts, our actions. And it's important to know that anyone can learn and develop resilience. Resilience that can empower us to withstand and learn from difficult and traumatic experience. Not that it's not stressful and distressful from time to time. But there's so much material that we'll be talking about more, and our leaders in our panels will talk some more about this today. So you can keep on typing. We want to keep on moving so we can get ready for Commissioner Morath to come. So we'll move on to the next slide. Rahana, you want to talk about the some of the mental health resources that you've gathered from our colleagues across TEA?
Yes, so we have some incredible resources, including an attachment for the statewide plan for student mental health. We have, and that's from Senate Bill 11. We have some incredible resources regarding our Title IV, and we are excited to share all of those resources in this link. So you will be getting access to them, as well as our mental and behavioral health page on the TEA website. And we'll also have access for our highly mobile and at-risk division, which was the division that Julie and I were previously in. And that has a wealth of information for students who are homeless, experiencing homelessness, as well as students who are currently within the foster care system. So we are excited to share those with you, and hopefully those resources will be a benefit to you throughout the year, and you can add them to your toolkit. And so again, Amanda has added in the chat that all of these resources that you're going to get today, as well as for the remaining Thursdays in September, are in the downloadable and fillable ABC Summit Workbook. It is a beautiful and incredible resource, and I hope that you find it to be empowering and helpful as you navigate through this year.
Thank you, Rahana. And I want to point out that we will be releasing some new resources and tools that are in the final stage of technology development with our partners at Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health and at WESTAT, which is the Texas Comprehensive Center, Region 4, that supports departments of education across the country. And so we are developing some resources, new resources that we will be releasing as the summit moves forward. So we'll keep some of that as a surprise. And so thank you for sharing that, Rahana. Okay, and so with that, I want to acknowledge and say to everyone that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I imagine that many of you in the summit today know that. We want to promote and acknowledge that. And in the spirit of collaboration with Project Aware, which is a project that TEA leads, and it's a collaborative effort with Laura Hernandez Gold at the Texas Department of Health and Human Services as co-coordinator for this initiative with TEA and UT and all the other wonderful agencies we partner with. Laura is also suicide prevention coordinator at HHSC, and she's going to just share with us some resources today, because it is the first session. I know she'll be taking a deeper dive into this later in the month in a session on September 23rd, but she wants to get out some things right now that you might want to take a look at here at the beginning of the month. Laura, are you with us? I think Laura's with us. Or I think Laura, if she doesn't jump in and she's not able to talk, she's going to drop some resources in the chat, some links that are coming up throughout the month. So when Laura gets a minute, she will drop in some links. There are some wonderful walks going on in different communities some of you may be engaged in. There's some very proactive work being done this month with veterans who are highly at risk. And so we would like to make sure that those resources are shared, and just keep monitoring the chat for when Laura has an opportunity to drop those down for you. Laura's lost power.
Sent a message that she sent a message that she will be loading some information into the chat so you can have those resources readily available. She's having a little bit of difficulty logging in. So
Okay.
Getting into the Zoom. So it's probably because we have so much traffic in here. We have 300 people so far in. So hopefully when she'll join us and add that information in the chat.
So that's not a problem. We are flexible. We are resilient. The resources will come. We're here today until 1 o'clock. So we'll just look forward to receiving those from Laura when she has a chance, because there are some great things and campaigns and materials that you can download with ribbons and brochures, activities you can do in schools and in communities, or you might want to join yourself. With that said, I'll just say a few things that Laura and that we talk about in Project Aware, just to kind of alert you that we do take, Texas, the state health department administers the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Survey every couple of years in Texas. And the most recent data that we had out of the survey did indicate something that is concerning, that 38% of our high school students who participated in the survey, enough participants to make it statistically significant, said that they felt hopeless in life to the extent where it impaired their functioning for 2 or more weeks. Students who actually have attempted to commit suicide have increased, as well as many of you know who work with students in your schools, with adults, with parents. We've had quite a significant increase in suicide behavior in our state and in our country over the past year. So we want to be aware of that. We are aware of that. Laura and others in Project Aware are available to support you if you need any resources or want to talk. So Commissioner Morath is here. And so what I'm going to do is get ready for Commissioner Morath to be highlighted, to share information in his welcoming message for us. And I'm going to leave us with the next slide as we transition to Commissioner Morath about Project Aware. I want to highlight that is in our resource guide that Rohanna shared with you, that TEA developed and stood up this year. Just want to highlight that for you really quickly. That will be probably talked about some more, so you can see that slide and that you have the link. And then on the next slide, we just want to leave you with the thought as we're setting the stage from all the comments that you shared. We're deeply appreciative that we can just remember that resilience is not a character trait. It does involve behaviors, thoughts, and actions that anyone can learn and develop. And that when we build it and equip ourselves and our students, this can empower us to withstand and learn from difficult and traumatic experiences. So you all acknowledge that in the chat. Thank you for appreciating that. And we want to work on that in the schools as we're working on building wellness and resiliency in education so students can grow and learn and thrive in their education journey and career. So I'm going to turn it over on the next slide to Commissioner Morath for his welcoming remarks, content session 1. When Commissioner Morath is ready to go, Commissioner's biography is in the biography section. Don't think he needs much further introduction. He is the Commissioner of Education of the Texas Education Agency. Thank you for joining us today, Commissioner.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks everybody for being here today. We are in month 19 of what is likely the most challenging educational environment that any of us have experienced. Certainly the most difficult environment that the country has experienced in over 100 years, and it's been tough on all of us. And I want to simply start by saying thank you to all the skilled practitioners that are involved in this conference. That whether you work in a school or you work in one of our community health partners, I am deeply grateful for the professionalism, the dedication, the compassion that you bring to the work to help our eager young minds become the best versions of themselves. And that requires us to invest in them the skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. But anybody that has passing familiarity with Maslow's hierarchy recognizes that there are some preconditions to making sure that learning and achievement at high levels can happen. And the work that we do to build resilience in our kids, to help them activate their executive functioning capacity and calm down their reptilian brain and in the amygdala. This is a critical part of the work. And so many of our kids for the last 18, 19 months, so many of us for the last 18, 19 months, so many aspects of our normal social behavior are the comforts, the things that provided us security, the assets that we had, have been disrupted. And we're continuing to live through that in terms of the core difficulties. But the aftermath will also be significant. And the work to help our students and our staff center themselves and grow in their mental health. This is critical. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the educators and all of the skilled professionals that are part of this summit. I hope that the participation in this summit gives you and equips you with more tools than ever before to again help improve the lives of our students and their families. Julie talked about some of the data before, but we've seen significant increases in the level of mental health risk factors, and in fact, the significant externalities that come from significant mental health challenges over the last 18 months, and these increases require us to improve and to change practices in terms of how we support kids. Again, we send our kids to schools to learn, to grow in their mastery of a whole host of academic subjects, but there's more to it than that. The growth of character and again, their ability to weather the storms that life throws at them. This is part of the work. So while we do face significant challenges from what has happened over the last 19 months, what is continuing to happen, we also see new hope and new resources, an unprecedented infusion of resources for both direct student instruction and academic support, and for improvements and investments in resiliency and mental health supports and broader character development. These are all part of the resource bases that have been added financially due to both federal and state action, and practically. So when I think about what we are doing programmatically at TEA, we have invested heavily in supporting improvements in accelerated learning practices. So you think about the work of 20 eager young minds in a third grade math class and making sure that they all master that lesson on the denominator. When many of them missed significant portions of their second grade year. That means that we have to diagnose those academic gaps, and we have to create redirect opportunities in real time, sort of just in time, accelerated instruction, curricular supports and teacher training supports, as well as targeted tutoring, which is being stood up at scale in Texas. This is important for the learning aspects, but with regard to strengthening the mental health and wellness of our students, Last year, we rolled out our first ever 5-year statewide plan for student mental health, with goals and actions to support the resiliency and the broader mental health skills that students possess. The plan development included reference to nearly 2,000 community resources, because our schools are certainly not islands isolated in this. We're archipelagos connected to huge resources in the community that need to be brought to bear to help our kids both during and outside of school time. We at the agency, and given the significant need that our students have, and also changes that the legislature has made to invest so much in this, we are standing up a Safe and Supportive Schools division that will be focused specifically on these questions of ensuring that students are ready to learn, that they are in fact safe, both physically and mentally, and are provided the right kind of support in growing their resiliency. This is a first ever operational unit in TEA with a focus on this work. We've rolled out our Resilient School Support Program, grants to help districts rapidly respond to the specific needs of their students, which cover both mental health and academic areas. The Safe and Supportive Schools framework is being embedded into the work of the Effective Schools framework and the Effective District framework, all tools to help districts systematically improve the mental health and resilience that kids need and grow as they progress in different stages of life. And of course, as kids that are having more severe mental health needs, ensuring that they have the right multi-tiered system of support to address their specific needs. Just this week, TEA was notified that we were awarded a second competitive national grant on this. Project Aware 2.0 for Texas is administered in support with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. It's a $10 million grant for TEA over 5 years. This will allow us to support school systems around the state, both students and mental health professionals. So the work that we are doing is getting more significant and more systemic in order to address the growing need that we're seeing around the state. The counseling function in school districts often provides both sort of college and career advising, as well as the central support work, especially for students that are in, say, a higher tiered status of need. The agency is developing in collaboration with a number of partners around the state, the effective advising framework, specifically to help strengthen the counseling function in school systems for this purpose, and ensure that the connection between the mental health supports that are provided is also made with college and career advising functions. And last but not least, and Julie showed a slide of this before, but during the crisis, we stood up Texas Project Restore. So I don't know if y'all have visited it, but go check out the website, texasprojectrestore.org. It's a video training series. I think each video is ballpark 20 to 30 minutes long. It's meant to train teachers and other education professionals on evidence-based practices that they can execute in the classroom in real time as a general tier 1 instructional support to strengthen the resilience of our students. I will say that just watching the videos for me as a dad has also improved my ability to try to strengthen the mental resilience of my own kids, since I've got 2 3-year-olds, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old, they need support in their broader character development and their ability to regulate their emotions. Anytime I can get James to stop wailing on his little brother or sister is a good day. So this Texas Project Restore is is a resource, again, designed to equip teachers with those practices. And we are expanding our investments in that area to help educators and families with these supports. So again, I'm grateful for the work of this group in helping, in many cases, provide really critical care for students that are having a very significant mental health crisis, suicidal ideation and the like, but as well as ensuring that we are embedding what we know about the evidence and what we know about the brain development, and frankly, making sure that our schools will lead first and foremost with love, so that we know that we are growing kids that are built with a love thy neighbor ethos. And again, I'm grateful for this group. I feel blessed to be able to do this work, to wake up every morning and think about how to help 5.5 million souls in Texas public schools. But I'm honored to be able to do this work with so many skilled professionals, and grateful for the folks on this call. So I hope everyone has an extraordinarily productive time during the sessions in this summit, that you come away with tangible practices that you can operationalize immediately in your local context in ways that improve the lives of our kids. So again, thanks for all of your work, and God bless you for what you do.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Morath, for addressing us this morning with your vision. Doing some vision casting and focusing on leadership today is what we're doing, and that really showed us the integral parts, pieces and parts that TEA is leading in the collaboration that we're doing across all the leaders in the agencies together. And I think an important point that you shared that we want to double down on is that prevention work that we do, and that early support and teaching in our schools. Many people often think our mental health work is only in a crisis, but what we do is work to prevent it and build that character and those skills, those personal skills as well. So thank you for sharing that important message with us today. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone. Any thoughts or reflections on the commissioner's vision and kind of charge to us in the direction that TEA is leading this work, that you would like to share in reflections in the comments? It's very helpful to know that TEA is partnering. TEA is leading this session today for the summit. We will have all the agencies sharing resources throughout the month because there is a lot going on. There's a lot to learn. I'm gonna just talk for a minute while we're waiting. We're gonna take a break shortly before we do our next session, but Commissioner mentioned about 2,000 different resources that were identified by our regional education service center partners. Our education service partners are our critical link to the support work that we do with schools. And I'm going to turn it over to Laura shortly to talk a little bit more about some of the partners and partnerships and resources that she's going to share, because she has been able to log on and she's got some things she's dropping in the chat. But let me just go back to the 2,000 resources and be grateful to the ESCs and also to mental health professionals hired through local mental health authorities and education service centers together, who are repositioned, I call it, located inside of our education service centers to add depth to the capacity of our education service centers to identify resources, to link and connect those with our educators, to provide training and supports in mental health first aid, trauma-informed practices, suicide prevention, and more. So Health and Human Service Commission has been very important in that role, and we're grateful to our legislature and our state leadership for funding that initiative in our state. I think it's quite unique across the country, and so I just want to acknowledge and be grateful for that. Also, I want to say TEA also has an initiative funded through some of our federal funding for building, well, integrating enrichment and mental health and services supports in schools, specifically through our title programs, Title IV, Part A. And we have an initiative that operates out of Region 14. And they provide, Rod and Nancy provide all kinds of resources to education service centers and help make sure questions get answered, and are very important in the mental health ecosystem that we're establishing across agencies in our work with the Texas School Safety Center, in our work to build psychological safety as well as physical safety for students and schools. I want to acknowledge the work of Title 4A capacity building grant for mental health from Region 14 with Rod Pruitt and Nancy Galley. Also at TEA, I want to mention Craig Growski, who has been leading and undertaking the work of our Senate Bill 11 Safe and Supportive School program that we're working to kind of stand up and help equip agencies, school agencies with, local education agencies, that will involve integration in the new division that the commissioner mentioned for mental health supports on the psychological side of safety, as well as physical safety. And there'll be a lot of new resources and tools coming out there. I want to acknowledge our colleagues in the student coordinated advising and support division, some of whom I believe are joined with us today for resources that they're developing and releasing and supports that they provide, starting with communities and schools, led by Sarah Grunberger and Eric Metcalf and Sarah Vercher at the agency. And we all collaborate together, as well as Stephanie Lerner, who is leading our school counselor efforts. This team is critical in our agency, and we meet regularly and collaborate across divisions for this work. Also in our curriculum division, where the State Board of Education is working on standards that we already have in essential elements, in our Texas essential elements and skills, our TEKS, for building character, and legislature added in new personal skills for students that align with building that wellness and resiliency in education. So that is continuing to evolve, and just wanted to share that so that all of this work is happening. Also, Dr. Gay Lang, who has worked tirelessly to build our resources and training for our education service centers in our schools on restorative practices. We have more and more trainers in our state, and we are grateful for learning the skills of how to convene groups and do circles, and how we resolve conflicts and work together in healthy ways. So I want to be grateful and have gratitude for the work that Dr. Lang is leading. Also, our special education department is standing up wonderful resources with tiered Texas interventions and early resources, tiered interventions through MTSS. And they are working with us with building resources in our school mental health space. And we are integrating a lot of the training and the concepts to be able to support behavior, mental health, social and emotional wellness that underpins, as the commissioner said, preconditions for academic learning and growth. So together, I think the collaborative spirit internally is wonderful at TEA and externally. So now what I want to do is turn it over to Laura Gold, that she's logged on now. And I'd like her to just kind of launch us into just thinking about Suicide Prevention Awareness Month for a minute, and remembering that mental health prevention, all of these things we're talking about are important in suicide prevention. And Laura's an expert in this space. Laura, can you say a few words to us?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Laura Hernandez Gold, and I'm the Suicide Prevention and Project Aware Co-Coordinator here at HHSC in the Office of Mental Health Coordination. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Julie. Yes, September is National Suicide Prevention Month, and next week is National Suicide Prevention Week. September 10th is Worldwide Suicide Prevention Awareness Day. I have already dropped in a couple of links to some amazing resources that we have from national organizations, and I will be adding a couple of more from HHSC, as well as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I will be putting in all those in the chat in just a minute. But yes, Julie, and on September the 16th, we will be having our summit workshop will be in part about suicide prevention and the importance of collaborating with our community partners and making sure that we are enhancing and strengthening all safety for all our students as well as our staff. We cannot forget about our school staff and families as well. So we will be putting in more information on September 16th as well. You will be learning many more resources and tools. And of course, if anybody has a question, I will put in my email address. You are more than welcome to email me at any time. We are very fortunate here at the state to now have a team of 5 people working on statewide suicide prevention efforts. So we definitely now have the capability to really reach out and provide more evidence-based information to everyone, whether that's an educator, a parent, a student, or anyone else in the community. So we do have that information. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And Julie, thank you very much for letting me just share a few minutes on that.
Absolutely. And Laura, Dr. Harvey, who leads your Office of Mental Health Coordination, will be on our leadership panel shortly, sharing. And there are so many resources from HHSC, from the Office of Mental Health Coordination, and then the Children's Mental Health Division as well.
Yes.
I know Dorothy Garza is here, who supports the mental health professionals in the ESCs I was mentioning. And Laura, if you want to just quickly mention, while we have a few more minutes, like some of the other things that you're doing in your division there, I think that really cross the agency and things we want to make sure we're tapping into. And I would just say like CRCG, mental health first aid, if you just could mention.
Definitely, definitely. So within our suicide prevention team, we have two programs that we are doing right now. One is called Suicide Care Initiative, and that is funding from the Federal Mental Health Block Grant. And that enables us to work with all our local mental health and behavioral health authorities, all 39, who provides resources to all 254 counties in our state. And they are working very closely to strengthen and enhance their suicide care resources, programs, trainings, and tools. So please make sure that you are aware of which local mental health or behavioral health authority is working with your schools. I know that sometimes they could be more than one. And if you have any questions about that, I can definitely help in that capacity as well. And I'll put some information in the chat as well. So that's one of our big programs. The next one is we have also a SAMHSA funded suicide prevention grant called RISE. You'll hear more about that as well on September the 16th. And we are working with specific school districts as well as juvenile justice, the local mental health authority, and so forth to strengthen our suicide prevention resources for youth and transition aged youth. So that's ages 10 to 24, because we do know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for that age group, ages 10 to 24. So we have a grant, 5-year grant that we are also working on in that capacity that is called RISE. As well, within the Office of Mental Health Coordination, of course, we have our mental health first aid team here, Carrie Hoffman and John Dell. And so they are also working very closely with all our local mental health and behavioral health authorities to make sure that they are working with their education service centers and all their school districts to enhance and strengthen mental health first aid training to everybody. And that includes adult and youth mental health first aid training. And they're also working with them to move out teen mental health first aid, which is an amazing project that has just come out in the last couple of years. And so working with specific school districts as well through the LMHAs and LBHAs to provide that training to our older youth so that they too can help their peers, because we know that peers talk to peers. Students talk to each other all the time, and they're the ones that they go to when they're in a mental health crisis. And so now we're providing some tools for those youth to know who to go to. It's not about help, and it's not about telling the youth to work with that other person, but it's about making sure that they know the signs, the warning signs, and then who is a trusted adult who has that training, who has the resources available to help that student and their family. So that is very, very important. Also, we have, of course, our CRCGs in the Office of Mental Health Coordination as well, who work alongside all the numerous community mental health agencies to include our school districts to really strengthen those collaborations and partnerships, because we know that we can't do this on our own. We have to be working in collaboration and in partnership with everyone in our community. And I know that sometimes we may not know who is helping who or what the services are. I worked in a large school district for 10 years, as well as working at our local mental health authority, Integral Care here in Austin. And I know that sometimes that communication can be challenging, to say the least. And so we want to make sure that everybody is aware of all the resources that you have possible in your community. There are many, and it really takes the idea of communicating, finding out what is there and sharing that information out. So we've been trying to do that through our Project Aware as well, and then through our statewide efforts here at HHSC.
Thank you so much, Laura, for previewing this. You know, as adult learners and as all learners, how many times is it that we need to hear things and we need to hear it over and over and learn it? I know Dr. Harvey will be doubling down on some of this as well. And I think just making these connections is so critical for us. And we're going to continue to do this and be spotlighting some of the LEAs who are implementing, some of the trainers that from I call it the House Bill 19 people, because I can't get that. And I just want to acknowledge and be vulnerable here that there are so many acronyms in this work. And I don't want anyone to feel inadequate or incompetent if we don't have them all down right yet. But mental and behavioral health specialists that Dorothy Garza does coordinate, that are in our ESCs, helping to equip with some of this training that Laura's talking about, and Carrie Hoffman with the wonderful work through mental health first aid. And I just want to be grateful for that and say that our state has continued to fund mental health first aid. And this is really unique in our country. And we need to just keep getting that out there, because Laura, that training helps equip us as a base that we really need to help us and then delve deeper into our suicide prevention work. Wouldn't you say?
Definitely, Julie. And mental health first aid, you know, it is evidence-based. It is all over. It is international. And so we have been highlighted, the state of Texas has been highlighted across the United States through the National Council, who manages mental health first aid, for our work and what we have been doing to really spread this information, because it really does give you a wonderful action plan to help somebody who may be experiencing a mental health crisis, to include a suicidal crisis. And so it really does help provide those basic tools. And then I would definitely encourage, of course, that we look to our other types of training, such as Ask About Suicide to Save a Life, which is also a Texas-based and Texified evidence-based suicide prevention gatekeeper training through our Texas Suicide Prevention Collaborative, our statewide suicide prevention partners, with Lisa Sullivan as the director there. So we definitely want people to know that you want to be able to get all the training that you can, so that you really can feel comfortable when it comes to working with somebody who has a suicidal crisis. It will never, ever be easy to ask somebody if they are having thoughts of suicide, but we need to be able to start that conversation. We need to be able to know those warning signs, and we need to be able to know how to ask, so that people know that we care and that we can help them through that difficult time.
So wonderful, Laura. In the base of Tier 1, setting that up, and this is something that we're all going to be talking about next week some more, but setting up that and equipping ourselves, even beyond the minimums of what the state requires, when we can, is just so important. And it frees up teachers, and it also helps teachers to be able to be well themselves. A lot of these resources that we're sharing. And we're going to have a focus on staff wellness, because we know, think of ourselves as adults. The commissioner talked about this too, right, Laura? That, I mean, it's hard to, if you're kind of not equipped with some knowledge and skills and abilities, it's hard to support your children. It's hard to support the students in schools. So resources for parents and families, resources for schools, building that community ecosystem to support mental health holistically that the commissioner talked about and that we talk about in Project Aware, right? That's the base of Project Aware. So Laura, I want to congratulate all of us for what the commissioner announced a few minutes ago. I don't know if you were logged in yet, and then I'm going to give you all a break, but I'm just going to throw it out there that the commissioner notified everyone that we did get Aware 2.0 grant in Texas. That means nationally they're valuing our work, and we do appreciate that deeply. And Laura, I hope that means we'll be doing more engagement and getting out more resources across the state together.
Definitely. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So now it's 11 o'clock. We're going to take a 15-minute break back here on time sharp. Will be our leadership panel at 11:15. Don't miss it. See you in a minute. You can just go off screen, refresh your drinks, and mute yourself, and we're good. See ya. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for rejoining. I hope you're all refreshed. I would like to now introduce our facilitator for our next session. And I believe we may be having a little bit of technical difficulties with our slides, but that's okay. We can work through that. That's not a problem. I want to make sure that we highlight Amanda, please. Felicia Mason Edwards, who will be our facilitator for our leadership panel that we're going to have now. So I will introduce Felicia while we are getting her highlighted. Felicia is a therapist, a speaker, facilitator. She's a certified family partner, something we're going to learn more about eventually here in our collaborative efforts, and a mother. And Felicia now serves as the family peer supervisor, peer services, coordinator for peer and recovery services programs, policy and planning at HHSC. She has worked in social services for over 30 years and most recently served at the DFPS as a division administrator for faith-based programs. Prior to that, she was a family partner program specialist with the Children's Mental Health Team. And she's presented throughout the country on working and coordinating with state organizations, faith-based and community organizations to partner to ensure student and family success. She's consulted both nationally and internationally. Her goal is to ensure our system that we learn together, that we learn to work smarter and not harder and partner better for the sake of our children and families. The things she loves most in life are spending time with her family and fishing. And thank you, Felicia, for being our facilitator for our leadership panel. I know that I'm going to turn it over to you and that Amanda and the team are highlighting Dr. Courtney Harvey right now. We're going to put everyone in gallery view, Tim Regal with TEA and Luann Southern with the Children's Mental Health Partnership, and also Molly Lopez, who's having tech difficulties, and I hope that she's on here, but she will join as soon as she can. We've got Luann and Tim and Dr. Harvey. And so I think we have enough people waving and smiling at us that we can turn it over to Felicia, who is going to take it from here. And there's Dr. Lopez. So for the next 45 minutes, sit back with your beverage, enjoy, and listen to us talk about leadership in this space. Felicia?
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Julie Wayman. And it is such an honor to be here this morning. She definitely introduced me. I love the bio because it makes me sound bigger than what I really am. So it's always good to hear that. But really, I always tell people that my daughter gave me the gift of my job. And so she helped me learn how to navigate the mental health system and the special education system in the schools. And so I am honored to be here to be talking about being leaders for resilience, because both her and I had some great leaders within our school system that really helped us kind of learn and equipped us with how to be resilient. And so thank you so much to you panel members and you interagency leaders for being here today. I would strongly encourage everyone to really look at the Summit Workbook and just read their biographies and get to know them a little bit better, because they have some impressive resumes, folks. And so I'm just honored to be here to help facilitate So we're going to get started in a little bit, but I really just want to talk about that each of you just carry a very important scope of work in the state agencies that you're charged with. And in some part, really to promote mental health and mental wellness for all Texans. But also at the same time, you kind of each lead work within your state agencies that's kind of different, like your organizational missions and priorities are a little bit different. So really for this session, we are just going to relax. We're going to kind of take the next 40 minutes to just kind of go around the table and really learn from your thoughts on leadership, resilience, and collaboration. So I'm going to ask you that we all imagine, kind of like we tell our children to do, and we tell our students to do in school. I want you guys to just imagine that we are all sitting around a big table in a room together with our lovely guest. And we have about 12 minutes for each question. So I ask that you guys share kind of at a high level, about 3 or 4 minutes a piece for each question. But we will go around the table and we'll first start off with Dr. Harvey, and then we'll go to Mr. Tim Regal, and then we'll start with Ms. Luann Southern, and then Dr. Molly Lopez. So are you guys ready? Are you relaxed? You're like, yay, thank you. Thanks so much for the thumbs up. So we'll first start off with Dr. Harvey, but I will definitely say the question first. One, I want each of you to just briefly introduce yourself to the group, highlight your leadership role within your organization, and then I want you also to take a few minutes to really share an example about something that you are currently leading or something that you hope to lead in the future to advance mental health and wellness, particularly when it comes to supporting our schools, students, and their families. So Dr. Harvey, I will kick it off to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Felicia. I'm so honored to be here with you all today. As she mentioned, I'm Courtney Harvey. You've heard from a few of my staff already, Lord Gold being one. You've heard from Carrie Hoffman and Lillian Wynn and others in the chat box. But I am honored to serve as the Associate Commissioner for the Office of Mental Health Coordination at the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Our office lives within the Intellectual and Developmental Disability and Behavioral Health Services Department, which is under Sonia Gaines. In my office, there are several projects that we lead or jointly implement with the Texas Education Agency and other organizations, but two that I really wanted to highlight today that you all have heard about earlier in presentations are Project Aware, as well as our Resilient Youth Safer Environments grants. The reason that I am so proud of these initiatives is because they were spurred based on either natural disasters or critical incidents that have occurred in communities, particularly death by suicide. And so I think anytime you have natural disasters or those kinds of life-altering events that happen, we tend to flood communities with resources, and then within the next several months, those resources begin to dry out. And I think what we hear from people in communities is that they feel forgotten about. And I really appreciate these grant programs because for me, it is a saying to those communities, you are not forgotten about. We want to continue to build up your resilience through putting mental health services on the ground and not just making them available to the students, but to the points that have been made by Commissioner Morath and Julie and others. Like we know as counselors, if we aren't well, we don't know, we aren't knowledgeable about resources, then we have a very hard time taking care of the people that we're entrusted to serve. So I have to say that those are two grant programs that I am very excited about. And then I think in general, one of the initiatives that I'm involved with is the Statewide Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. For those of you that don't know, this is a legislatively directed body of 23 plus state agencies, state universities that receive funding from the Texas legislature for behavioral health training or services. And so What I am very excited about is maybe an opportunity for us to partner in advance of the upcoming legislative session to really dig more deeply into gaps in services for children, youth, and families. And not just with the focus on behavioral health services, but I also think like people need social supports. Like what about employment? What about housing? What about these other kinds of social supports that keep families together? So I am hoping that we can come together, dig more deeply into those gaps, and maybe come up with some joint recommendations for either exceptional items or statutory initiatives to help promote those kinds of services and supports.
Awesome, thank you. We are not forgotten. All right, Mr. Tim Regal.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Regal. I'm Associate Commissioner of Instructional Support at TEA. Been at TEA a little over years. And largely our department focuses on, it's a very Title II-ish department, right? So we focus on improvement in adult-led practices and systems. A lot of the work that we do are around campus instructional leadership systems and district systems. I think the aspect of our work that we're very excited about that's in development right now is an effective district framework. And I think there's probably a bunch of you guys have interacted with or have heard of the effective schools framework. But that was something built to focus on campus level systems and really provide an opportunity for us to kind of align across the state on what our best practices and campus led systems, deploy that tool as a resource for campuses to figure out, you know, where are they relative to those best practices, and thus what should they prioritize in their own improvement efforts, and then provide a link between, well, if this is the thing we're struggling with, who's out there that can get shoulder to shoulder with us and help us improve on this thing. So we're creating a district version of that same concept, largely. The district version, it's structured the same way. It starts with this idea of, are you a learning organization? And it talks about human capital, moves into not a punchily titled lever that is support for student readiness to learn, but it's where this work falls, right? This idea of, strong community and family engagement, proactive systems for mental health and wellness programs that benefit all students and staff, and then reactive systems for things that crop up and are be able to respond effectively. So that's a part of that. And our hope is that as districts use that in a very similar way that campuses use the ESF, they will be able to recognize a couple things. One, systems integration, how these things all work together, and that you can't do these things in isolation. Turning a dial here means you got to turn a dial there. And then two, really identifying the spaces where there's the greatest distance between their system as it currently exists and what that best practice imagines it being, so that aspirational state, and then having a better chance of finding strong capacity building and support opportunities. Someone that will get in there, we're big believers in job embedded PD, right? Oftentimes guidance and modules don't do it. And so we need someone that'll grind through the work with us. And we're hoping to use the EDF to organize those sets of resources for folks so they can easily find it.
Thank you so much. Love that integration framework. Thank you. And now Ms. Luann Southern.
Good morning, everyone. I got little messages that my internet is unstable, so I am hoping that I don't freeze up. I'll do my best, and if I do, I'll have to log back in. I am currently the director of the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium. The consortium was created during the 86th Texas legislative session, and one of our initiatives is called the Texas Child Health Access Through Telemedicine program, and it is a school-based telemental health project that is designed to help schools that we have developed memoranda of understanding with, identify students that may be in need of mental health assessments and short-term intervention by teams of individuals that are hired through our Texas Academic Health Science Centers. So we have 11 we call them health-related institutions that are providing those services around the state of Texas. There is a website for us that you can access, and I will put that in the chat so that you can look at the map of Texas and see which particular schools across our state have developed MOUs with our health-related institutions for the provision of those services. It's a way for us to be able to assist schools who may have students that they're thinking could benefit from a mental health assessment and some services through our community mental health system providers out in communities, nonprofit providers, government providers like the LMHAs. And so we are here to help identify students and work with schools and families to really link students with the services they might need to address their behavioral health needs.
Thank you so much. Love the telemental health resources. Awesome. And now, Dr. Molly Lopez.
Yes, hello everyone. It's such a privilege to be here with such amazing leaders on this panel. My name is Molly Lopez. I am the director at the Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health, and we are housed in the School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Austin. And the work that we do in our organization is really to help implement mental health practices that get good outcomes. And what I mean by that is we think about our role a bit as tour guides. We are able to draw from the information and research that's out there about how do we do this hard work of changing organizations, of building practices and embedding them in our schools, in our districts, in our community organizations. We get to use that research to help guide organizations and funders and policymakers into how to do that challenging work. We also get to do some help in terms of evaluating and using that data to understand where we're going in the right direction, where we may need to shift a little to really get the outcomes that we're wanting to get. And then also to do some research to learn about what is working and what we can do more of to really make that easier and better. It's a pretty amazing job, I have to say. Kind of my dream job. I tell people that all the time. And it really is about collaboration. That's one of the things I really love about it is we are partners with state agencies, with local community organizations, and that's where the work is happening. And we just get to kind of be along for the ride and help provide resources and tools and supports in order to make that happen. I've been lucky enough really to be involved in a lot of the projects that we've either talked about or are going to talk about over the course of the month. But one I thought I would highlight today, as this audience knows, TEA has so much respect for the educational service centers and the role that they play with schools and districts, that as we started talking about how we really support schools and districts and school mental health, we really recognized, and TEA, of course, very much recognizes the important roles that ESCs can play. So one of the things that I've been able to be a part of with an amazing team of folks is to help provide a professional learning collaborative for ESC school mental health leaders. We've been able to have great conversations with those school mental health leaders about what they're seeing in communities, in schools, and in districts, and what those needs are. And then strategize about how we bring some resources to that group to help support this work. So we've had probably close to 2 years now of ongoing meetings. Sometimes they're casual office hours where we're really just kind of talking about what they're seeing and what we might be able to do and how we can network together. And sometimes they've been more capacity building. How can we get resources and tools and information out that they can use and turn around with their districts? They've really jumped into their leadership role and have been working with schools and districts in their leadership role as well. And it's been exciting to watch and exciting to be a part of. And much of that work has informed some other things we're continuing to do to try and grow those resources and tools. And it's a bit of a cliche, but we all know it's still true. Texas is so large and there's so much, so many challenges to trying to bring things out statewide. that it really takes that partnership with those great leaders all across the state to make it work. So it's exciting to see when that happens.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez, and thank you so much for helping all of our agencies be that tour guide. So now we're going to get into question number 2. And so we're going to talk a little bit deeper about leadership and really about becoming resilient leaders and then leaders for resilience. We know that we've had a little bit of a difficult last couple of years. We've got COVID, we have social injustice, civil unrest. And so I just want to know what your thoughts are on leadership skills and qualities that you've learned kind of throughout your career that makes an effective leader. And then what might we do to equip ourselves to be more resilient or help others become leaders for resilience in these ever changing times? So again, Dr. Harvey, we will start with you.
All right. Yes, it has been a challenging time. I will say that I have developed a certain kind of resilience since working in state government. I always thought of myself as a resilient person. I tell people, if you look at my ACEs score, it is like 6+. So the fact that I've been blessed enough to become a doctor, be in this position, I'm like, lots of people must have been praying for me. And I'm seeing some people in the chat box that I used to work with that are like, you've come such a long way. Shout out to Santana Varial. So I will say, I've always thought about resiliency as kind of individual resiliency and not necessarily how we build resiliency as a team. And over the summer, I was asked to do a presentation for HHSC's Leadership Academy on building resilient teams. And that was really the first time that I actually taken the time to research what is this thing about team resiliency and how do we foster that? And so some of the comments that Julie and others have made today really resonated with me. I think sometimes when we talk about resiliency, it's these individual characteristics that you're just kind of born with, and then you have these life experiences that, help improve that. And I don't want to dismiss that, because I think there's a part of that that is true. But I think it is really important to reiterate the fact that you can build and test for resiliency. And we can do that individually and also can do that as a team. But I think what I have really learned in the last 8 years, going back to my employment with the state, is just change management and being comfortable with change, learning how to cope with change. I think that is something that is very difficult for people in general. And throughout our day, right? Like I'm thinking about just finding some place to move to. At like 8 o'clock, we could have a solidified plan. And by 10 o'clock, they're like, plan has changed. And that could happen like several times throughout the day. And so for me, I mentioned earlier, like being the eye of the storm. I used to work at a disciplinary alternative education program, and we were doing dialectical behavioral therapy before it really became like really fancy. And, you were doing it at schools and stuff. And we were piloting this program. And one of the images that always comes to mind for me is we would tell the kids about the importance of being the eye of the storm, right? The cone doesn't move. The cone is still. It's everything else around it that is being moved by wind and everything else. And so I think learning those kind of skills is very important. I also think learning how to be okay, or at least to cope with ambiguity and gray. So many times people are like, now tell me what you do again. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I need to find a more succinct way to describe it. I need to find a more succinct way to talk about what we do in our office and what our individual roles are. And there is a lot of gray, right? I mean, with the issues that we are experiencing, there's oftentimes not a direct or clean path to a solution. It's very messy. And so I think developing skills whereby you can be able to continue to work with that within that ambiguity when you don't have clear answers for things, but decisions still have to be made. I think that's important. And then communication and transparency, I think, is important. I think we can't communicate enough at all different levels throughout an organization or with one another. We just cannot assume that people have, you know, information. I ask questions all the time to my staff. I'm like, this might be a dumb question. And I know I probably asked it to you before, but just bear with me. You know, and so I think that communication and as much transparency as possible. I get that there are limits on transparency based on our positions, but I think as much as we can share, we should. And then I think, you know, needing to be a decision maker and to take risks. You know, I oftentimes tell my boss, Sonia Gaines, I'm like, well, we can always pivot, right? Like the kind of decisions that we are making on a day-to-day, lives are not going to be directly compromised by this. We're building policy. If a policy don't work, if we pilot something and it didn't work, change it. It's okay. It's okay to say, I thought this was a great idea and maybe it wasn't. You know, let's secure some feedback from folks about what we can do to improve. So I think humbling ourselves, allowing for quote unquote mistakes. I don't like to call them mistakes, opportunities to learn and pivot and do something different, I think is really important.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. So staying in the ambiguity, understanding that change is inevitable and it will continue to happen, but also maintaining yourself in the eye of the storm, because you are the eye of the storm. So Mr. Tim Regal.
Yeah, Dr. Harvey hit on a lot of the themes that I'll touch on, but you know, when people try to understand what I do for a living, I usually just default back to change management, right? And people who are coming to TEA, whether they know it or not, you're doing change management, right? We're helping adults do things differently tomorrow than they did it yesterday. That's just change management. So I agree with that 100%. I think the characteristic of leadership that is an essential part of resiliency in my mind, that's from what I've seen. And it doesn't create it entirely by itself, but is this idea of fallibility or humility. I think, again, Dr. Harvey, you touched on this, right? But the work that we do is incredibly complex. If our problems had simple solutions, they would have been solved by now, right? And I wish it was simple. Again, we're not pulling levers, we're tuning dials, and there's lots of them. Which means we're going to make mistakes, we're going to have errors. As long as they're earnest, they're recoverable, right? And we learn. But I think it's incumbent upon a leader to create an environment where we look for things that aren't working well, try to figure out why, how we can upgrade it, and it has to be modeled from the leader. They have to have that humility and fallibility. And if they don't, you don't create an environment where feedback is well offered and well received. You don't get true growth mindset. You get sort of like lip service growth mindset, right? You don't get the vulnerability you need off of your team to wrestle through complex things, because if that doesn't exist, we're never going to iterate to better and better supports. So I think what's hard about that is there's just so much out there that cuts against being comfortable with error. And I think a lot of models of past leaders have been these like perfect, these perfect individuals who, are Steve Jobs, and they're just like, they were born to transform the world, where mostly it's making mistakes and learning from them and grinding through the work, right? For most of us. The other thing I like about it a lot, especially when we're on campuses, we're in districts, it's just it's a great thing for students to see, right? The more they see the adults in their world on a daily basis own their errors, call them out, iterate, improve. They see teachers getting coached. They see principals getting coached. That reinforces this idea that we're all learning, we're all growing, we're all working. You will too, and it doesn't stop in 12th grade. It doesn't stop, at college. It goes for your entire life, right? And I think that's a really important model, because going back to my own high school time, I was one of those people who, that looks hard, I'm actually going to not do it for fear of failure. It's easier to stay over here and stay clean. And they just, the more they can have models of people who are, like lean into fallibility and recognize, transparently embrace it, I think the better that is for learning organizations.
Thank you so much. I love that analogy with the dials. We're just fine tuning, and definitely humility is what we all need. Thank you so much. Miss Luann Southern.
Well, this is such an incredible question, and I'm sure that a lot of the people that are participating today could also answer it in their own way, because each of us are individuals and we lead differently and we bring different skills and strengths to the table, regardless of the title that we have or the position that we fill. And in thinking about this specific topic, there's over the years several, I'll call them mantras, for lack of a better way of describing it, that I have used for myself in various positions that I've been blessed to fill over the course of a very long period of time, which we won't go into. But some of those include things like staying grounded. I think it's really important for all of us to remember where we came from. For some of us, like for myself, I grew up in a very teeny tiny town in Kansas, a farming community. I was certainly the first person in my family to go to college. Most certainly the first woman to have a master's degree from the community where I grew up. I do not take that lightly. I know that I carry the stories of all the other people in my community who did not have that opportunity. And so it's important for me to always remember that I carry a lot of responsibility in that regard as well. And so staying grounded for me is really important. I will say another mantra I have is that you should never let your ego get in the way of doing the right thing. It's really important because there are so many right things that we need to do for children and families in our state. And we are here because there are people in our state who need services and supports, and we are there as their partners to partner with them on helping families thrive. And so I think we have to be humble, and I know that word's been used several times by Tim and by Courtney as well. I will also say that through the course of my career, there are these things called the 4 agreements. Some of you may be familiar with the 4 agreements. That was a book that came out many, many years ago. I have found for myself those 4 agreements to be very helpful. The first one is not to take things personally. The second one is not to make assumptions. The third one is to be impeccable with your word. And the fourth one is to always do your best. Now that is real easy for me to say, those 4 agreements, but very difficult sometimes to practice, because there can be things that happen in the workplace or even in our personal lives, and especially the not making assumptions part or the not taking things personal part, because oftentimes, things will happen. When we're leaders, our employees may have disagreements, there might be conflicts, and to be able to understand that we all come every day, wherever we are, whatever our workplace, we have a story behind what we bring that day. We might have some stressors going on. We might have some personal things that are happening to us. And so leading with grace is so incredibly important. And I think especially now with all the events that have happened, as you mentioned, Felicia, over the course of the last year and a half, leading with grace is just a key piece. I will tell you that several weeks ago, I had the opportunity to participate in a retreat that was led by a guy named Mark Nepo, N-E-P-O. Mr. Nepo is, I will call him a modern day philosopher, for lack of a better way of describing it. But I'm gonna read to you something that he said that I think will resonate with all of us, given all of the experiences that we have encountered over the last year and a half. So Mr. Nepo specifically talked about being vulnerable. And the word vulnerability And in his mind, the definition of vulnerability is to carry a wound gracefully, is to be vulnerable. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of describing where we have all been. And then he said, we need to hold our wounds open to the light. Because as you know, when you hurt yourself, wounds need air. They need to breathe. They need to be in the light in order to heal. And so it's important for us to open our hearts so the grace within us can meet and heal a wound. What a beautiful metaphor from Mr. Nepo. And I wanted to share that with you today because as leaders, we have teams of individuals that we are responsible for, and we need to use that grace and understand all the wounds that we have experienced, not only in our own personal lives, but as colleagues with one another and the children and the family that we're working with every day. So I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much. So many nuggets in that. Definitely staying grounded, leading with grace, and really being vulnerable to show our wounds, because that's where the healing begins. So thank you so much for that information. Now, Dr. Lopez.
Wow, that was really beautiful. And I so appreciate, I just want to be in the audience listening to all of these great words of wisdom because it's incredible. And I wanted to be over here taking notes through it all, but I'm lucky that we'll have some access to some recordings of it. So I'm excited about that. I think I want to really just highlight a few of the things that were really already said so beautifully. One of the things that I feel like has been a bit of a lesson for me over these past 2 years, I've always known, I think we all probably do, that change and the work that we do as leaders happens in relationships, right? It's not about the policies we write or, even the tools and the things we put in front of people. It's about relationships. That's the way that it happens, right? And one of the things that I think really struck me over this past 2 years is, I feel like we're all sort of, the country as a whole and the world really as a whole, we're all at a part of sort of relooking at what is important to us, about what drives us, about what's meaningful to us, and about how we want to spend our hours and our days, in the world. And I think some of the good things that have come from what we've been through is that recognition of the importance of people and of connection in our lives and of having a vision for how we personally are contributing to our world. And so as I think about that in sort of the work that we all do, a part of that is entering those spaces, recognizing that, as Luann mentioned, we bring our stories, our values, and our wounds to our work. And that is what helps us make meaning, right? We're using those experiences to really define what's important to us and how we want to contribute to the people in our lives. And I think as leaders, we have the opportunity to help people connect to that. It's what motivates us, right? It's what helps us get up and go back the next day to do this really difficult work, is we see how what is important to us is impact, how we are able to impact that through what we're doing every day. And that may be the things that are specific in our roles. We are a teacher, we are a school counselor, we're a therapist, but it can also be those things that are not a part of our role, right? That we've made a connection with a young person, that we've made a connection with a colleague, that we've identified somebody who's in need and reached out to them and made a connection. And so thinking about all the ways we can bring that important piece about what's meaningful to us, what drives us to do the things we do, and how we connect that to our daily work, I think has just been something that I've really taken away from this experience. And I think we have chances to do that in the ways that we connect in meetings, and how we lead people to connect around those things that are important to them. I've seen some of the people that I work with do amazing jobs at setting the stage in events, in meetings, in one-on-one conversations to really make sure that that connection is there, even though we're stuck on Zoom or Teams or other sort of virtual settings, right? But it's intentional and it's meaningful. And in some ways, we're as connected as we ever were, even though we have to work a bit harder about it. So I think just taking advantage of the fact that we're all really examining our meaning and how we contribute to the world and bringing that into the room and making sure that that's a part of what helps us guide our work together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. Definitely those relationships and those connections are truly important. Well, goodness gracious, we had so many nuggets already dropped and we're on our last question. So we have about 5 minutes. So we're gonna do this a little bit different. We're gonna kind of do a popcorn style so everybody can just kind of jump in. We won't have to do our scheduled table kind of round table, but I do wanna make sure everybody has enough time to speak. And so really the last question is, when you're talking about like us as a community, you know, what opportunities do you all see for us to collaborate and really promote mental health and mental wellness in our schools? You know, what can we do better? And what are just some of those collaborative opportunities that you guys see moving forward? So again, it is open, popcorn style, anyone can jump in.
I am loving the regional work that is happening. I think for many, many years, people have been talking about like these invisible boundaries, right? It's like, I get there are local service areas, there's regions that a certain entity might cover and all of that. But I just think for me, right, if we could look at them as kind of invisible boundaries and we could work across our communities to assess the gaps that are in our communities and how we can work together to solve them, that is just very important. Texas is such a large state. I get on calls where all the time people are talking about best practices and I'm like, yeah, we have that in Texas. Like, we just need more of that in Texas. The problem is that we need more of it. And so I just think this idea about maybe expanding our worldview about who our community is going to be really important. Like, I'm from Corpus Christi. You know, like I'm seeing people in the chat that are like representing Alice and Banquete and, you know, other places in South Texas. And I'm like, Corpus is Nueces County, but my people are in Alice. My people are in Banquete, Three Rivers. I see you, Three Rivers, Flower Bluff, right? It's like bridges that separate us, right? Laredo, that's right. El Paso, I'm loving this in the chat. So I think, just thinking differently about who our community is and working across those invisible boundaries is really important.
Well, I will say that, you know, Courtney mentioned community, and we are all part of a community, regardless if we work in schools or if we work for the mental health system. And so the needs that we all have are no different than the needs that students that we work with or families that we work with have. And so if we can just remember the humanness of all of us and that we all want and need the same things to thrive and to survive in the communities that we live in. And so I would say also reaching out to churches, a lot of informal, I will call them, supports that we all need. You know, I heard someone say one time that faith, family, and friends is what keeps all of us going in our lives. And so I would say just reaching out in your community, make a phone call, take a risk, find out what's happening and how those connections can be made that are so important.
Those are great. I'm just going to quickly add, because I know we're running short on time. I love the idea. We know that there's great, innovative, effective things happening in the state, and there's a lot of lessons being learned. So I just see the opportunity to pull all of that together and share that across the state so that folks don't have to recreate the wheel. Right? You can be learning from each other about the exciting, innovative ways that you're putting this in place. I'm excited for that to happen.
And the only thing I'll add in like 10 seconds, all of those things, plus not losing sight of this idea of at the end of the day, we want our campus leaders and we want our district leaders when we're thinking about K-12 systems to be able to integrate this, right? Not add it on, not assign it to a couple folks and let them run with it, but this has got to be integrated. It's a part of a whole, and all these things come together, work together. They have to be weaved together. And so, to your point, Molly, you know, the more we can show them models of what it looks like to integrate it effectively, just the more helpful we can be for folks that are trying to, in their best efforts, trying to do these things.
Well, wow, it has been an amazing 45 minutes. You guys have dropped so many, little nuggets of knowledge and wisdom. So thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for your leadership and your stories. And again, thank you guys as guests. Thank you guys so much for listening and engaging in the chat. I do know Dr. Harvey did drop a book in the chat. So please make sure that it's Managing for Resilience, a practical guide for employee well-being and organizational performance. And then Ms. Luann Southern also put some resources in here as well. So please make sure you are looking at that and get the recording later. And so again, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for listening. Continue to work smarter, not harder, but partner better, and continue to be leaders in your own community, not only in the schools, in your communities, but also with your own families as well. So thank you so much, and I'll kick it back to Julie.
What an amazing panel. Thank you so much. Cheers to everybody for your sharing your leadership wisdom with us. I'm inspired. Thank you, Felicia, for moderating, and thank you for all of you for being here today. We're going to have a 15-minute break, reflect, refresh, and we'll be back. Thank you. 12:15.
And as a reminder, the definition of vulnerability, uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. The 4 skill sets that we will talk through and walk through over the next 4 weeks: rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values, braving trust, and learning to rise. And as we do this work and you leave this session in a few minutes, my hope is that you will leave with a strong back, a soft front, and a wild heart to do this difficult and heart-centered work that means so much to so many people. And I also would encourage you to find 10 minutes today at the end of your day to reflect on your day, to reflect on the intention of your day, your call to courage, and do something that fills you up because you can't pour from an empty cup. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing y'all next Thursday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peacock. That was very inspiring, and so much look forward to the month with your leadership lessons. We want to express deep gratitude to our amazing presenters today. Thank you for Commissioner Morath coming to give us a wonderful gathering message and encouragement to our leaders, our interagency leaders at HHSC, at the Child Mental Health Care Consortium, at TEA, and at UT. It was brilliant, and I think that we're all inspired. So thank you for that so much, all of you. Thank you to our guests for being here. We want to thank our professional learning community at our ESCs for the coaching work you're doing, all the training we've been through for 2 years on school mental health models and research and frameworks. Thank you to our school mental health task force members who are here, to all of our local education agencies, all kinds of positions who have joined us today, our community mental health providers. We are deeply appreciative of that. Absolutely wonderful to gather together today, just to send us all off feeling inspired with courage and ready to rumble with vulnerability. Thank you, Rohana, for monitoring the chat and for all of your leadership. She's putting in some information about the CEUs after you complete the evaluations. On the next slide, I think we want to go ahead and just encourage a little bit of discussion and reflection. We have 5 minutes, and one thing that we wanted to do was gather a few of your thoughts. If we can, Dr. Lopez, through our Mentimeter, If we need to pivot from that, we will do that. But we do have a couple questions, and we really would like to kind of close with this and then send you off thinking about next week. So what is one takeaway concept that you are leaving with as this first summit session closes? So just think about your takeaways from today, all of the wisdom and inspiration that was poured into us, the learning.
Hoping that Rohana might put the Mentimeter in chat. She's probably already done that. Maybe I can't see it, but those of you, you can either go in through chat through the link, or you can go to menti.com, which you all probably know how to do this very well, but just in case, and add the code there on your phone, and that will bring you into the into our tool.
And we appreciate you all typing in chat. Let's see if we can practice with the link and the Mentimeter code. Do we need any other instructions on that?
I don't think so, but if folks are struggling to get in, let me know. Oh, there we go.
Okay, we're seeing people clicked on the link, and we're starting to get our thoughts up on the screen. Hopeful moving forward. You know, Dr. Bruce Perry, a psychologist for trauma and brain, and a lot of the neurology work done in Texas, really talks about hope and the power of hope. You cannot be resilient without hope. So thank you for sharing that. Be brave. Yes. Naming my call to courage. We will capture all of these concepts that you're leaving with from your first summit session. Embrace the suck. Resilience is learned, absolutely, not a trait. These are skills that we can build. Vulnerability. Hanging in there, absolutely. Naming your call to courage. Daring to lead with grace. Got to create our communities of support. All right, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for entering these into the Mentimeter, and so that we can capture some of these. We're also capturing your concepts and your thoughts in the chat. Molly, we have another question now that we've got a little practice with the Mentimeter. This is great. So this is the kind of the charge to us, the planning committee, the interagency planning committee. And as we tweak and perfect, what are you looking forward to learning more about in the next 4 sessions of the ABC Summit? So you have your book. We reviewed with you the topics at a high level for the next 4 sessions. But what kind of stands out to you now? What would you like to learn more about next? Here we've got the code, more daring to lead. If anyone was struggling with the code, Angela dropped that in the chat, thank you. We would like some more tools. So as these are coming in and we just have a couple minutes to close, I will let you know that at the next session, we will be previewing UT with the research and the professional learning community work that we've done with some of the essential elements for school mental health will be covered. You will really like it that we will be breaking down tools developed through Project Aware as part of our deliverables for our grant that are going to be released in September through a new school mental health website, a learning management system, and a toolkit. Just some simple tools that we think will be helpful to help us get started. And so that will be happening more next week. Social and emotional tools, more dare to lead, how to effectively build rapport, best practices across the state. So these are things that we can keep working on. Commissioner Morath talked about the new safe and supportive schools. A division he's standing up under Tim Regal. We have a new director that we're so excited about, that's inspirational. And hopefully I can get Tim and maybe the new director who will be leading us in this work to come say hello to us in one of the upcoming sessions, maybe in the next session. But there's just a lot of things that are happening with our school counselor work and all the support. So we will keep it up. Thank you for sharing that. The team will review. What is one word that describes the type of daring leader you would like to be this year? We're going to handle this in a word cloud so we can gather your thoughts in one word from each of you. And so let's just kind of get those into the Mentimeter and let's get us a nice group sending message about daring leaders that you all are and that we all are, and we all inspire to be. Look at the word cloud coming together. Take it in. You know, listening to each other and learning from each other is so profound. The networking that you're able to do, I hope you've made some connections today with each other. I hope that you've accessed some resources. We'll continue to share resources and pull them together. You know, as Tim, Dr. Harvey, and Luann and Molly said today, we have a lot of resources. We have new ones that we're developing and will be coming out. But just pulling all of the menu together so that you can use them and we can be thought partners together so we can help all of our students to graduate college and career ready, set their goals for their future. Thank you so much for all of your words about how you're going to be daring leaders this year.